Welcome to episode 57 of Upshift, No Direction Network podcast that gives you an edge on Essence20. I'm Ryan Costello, one of the designers of the Essence20 system, and an author on the G.I. Joe Transformers and My Little Pony role-playing game core rulebooks, and much more.
And I'm Charles Cushman. I'm on a journey to dig into the nitty-gritty, fighty details of the Essence20 system and tap into Ryan's expert knowledge to get the most out of the game.
Before we begin, although I have worked for Renegade on Essence20, Upshift is not associated with or produced by Renegade Game Studios. This is not an official Essence20 podcast, and all opinions shared herein are our own. Charles, it's Boxing Day today in Canada, and if there's one thing I've learned about Boxing Day, it's that I have no idea what the perception of Boxing Day is outside of Canada.
Interesting. I never even, that thought had never even crossed my mind. I had assumed that it was the day that you threw out all the boxes that the things came in.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was because the stores didn't want to box up their Christmas stuff. They sold it for cheaper.
Oh, see, an absolutely totally different take on it than I had.
Well, one way or another, it is not what I would call a holiday here, although I have heard an American argue that it's as big as Thanksgiving is in the States, which could not be more wrong. It is a day you either shop or you don't shop. Like, that is the extent of it. There's no Boxing Day traditions. You spend Christmas opening stuff and then doing stuff with family, and so Boxing Day is your first opportunity to really play with your new stuff.
All right. Well, speaking of playing with things, let's talk about boxing, or more specifically, melee.
Yes,
I
I like it.
Yeah, my question is, Indiana Jones demonstrated this perfectly. If you had a gun, why would you use a sword? So we'll take this over to Essence 20. What is the importance of melee in a game with guns, lasers, and shrink rays?
You say melee, I say melee.
Melee. Well,
Melee.
potato, melee. I was going somewhere with that, but I didn't get there.
So yes, there is obviously melee combat in Essence20. We've talked about this, but I'll just summarize. Essence20 is weirdly unique among role-playing systems that I've been exposed to in that it doesn't treat attacks as its own thing. It's just another type of skill test you can make. And so if your character invests in certain skills, they can be good at certain types of attacks. And we have separated the types of attacks into 3 different skills. You've got the range stuff, which is almost exclusively targeting, although athletics is also in that conversation. And then for melee combat, you've got might and you've got finesse. And if you invest in these skills, then when it comes time to make a melee attack, you are good at that. And you can get even better at that by choosing certain options, mainly a role that is dedicated to some kind of melee combat. And then, of course, there's some general perks that there are so many general perks and they're scattered everywhere that I usually do not take the time to actually find the list that I would recommend for something like this. I could have, I didn't. But that's effectively it. Melee is a might or finesse skill test that has to be done within the reach of the weapon.
All right, so you ready to go to the shoutouts? Or okay, no, I feel like there's more. There's more to this topic than you're letting on here.
Yes. So there's a couple more basic rules we'll get into, and then we can talk about why melee is even in the system. So one rule that I think often gets missed is that if you are in melee with somebody or you are within their reach, you can make a ranged attack, but you suffer a downshift. And that basically means that there's 3 different cadences to combat. There's the big weapons, which have a minimum range. And if you get within that range, then they are really prone to your melee attacks. Then there are regular range attacks, which have no minimum. And so if you get within your reach of them, you are disrupting their attacks, but they can still attack you. And then there's just straight up melee, which is you are within the reach of the target. You are able to attack them. And technically, grappling is a type of melee attack that is trying to get even closer than within the reach of the weapon. You really want to close that gap completely. We're not going to go into the rules of grappling because that probably could be its own episode. But just know that those are like the 4 steps or the 4 different types of range that an attack can have. I don't know why I'm going to summarize, but it's ranged attack with a minimum range, ranged attack with no minimum range, melee attack, and grappling.
Right. And we can save the grappling topic for grappling day.
WrestleMania?
Yeah, I figure around then. Yeah.
We'll see. Not
All
super
right.
happy with
So,
WWE right now.
all right, fair enough. I can see how that's like we don't talk politics and religion here on the show. Well, we
And
actually.
somehow wrestling has become politics.
So, I'm going to start here. Why is it important to have in the Essence 20 system?
So, like, this one's pretty straightforward. It happens. Every soldier deploys with a knife because when someone gets too close, a knife never runs out of ammo. A knife, aiming is a lot more natural. It's just part of your regular movement. It's just you have now made an extension of your arm that is stabby enough to kill somebody. And so, in all combat, melee is an option, but it's also like Power Rangers is mostly melee. In fact, all these characters I've discovered have pistols on them, and yet the majority of their fights are martial arts fights. And G.I. Joe, a lot of the iconic characters are melee characters. Realism be damned. This is a military setting with a bunch of ninjas. And then Transformers to a lesser extent. And we're not going to get into Welcome to Night Vale because this is a very combat focused episode, and Night Vale isn't really a combat focus, so I am acknowledging Night Vale exists. It is the fifth of our settings. My Little Pony also exists and actually does have some melee combat, so we'll get touched upon. But this is it for the Night Vale portion of the of the conversation.
All right, I don't see ponies pulling out rifles and shooting, but I'm sure there is some
No,
function that
their
allows
ranged
them to do
combat is
so.
usually magic based.
Yeah, but so what makes melee special? Like what makes it interesting? What makes it more dramatic, as you said?
Okay, so let's go back to when I was saying there's all the different ranges. It increases the dynamism of any combat because if combat is just a shootout, it's just we're behind your cover, you're behind cover, that gets very samey. But knowing that there are some characters that are built for range and some characters that are built for up close, it's the old war game philosophy of you shoot the stabbies and you stab the shooties. So if you are a stabby, you want to figure out a way to close the gap. And so the first couple of rounds of combat, you might not even be attacking because you're doing the long way around or the sneaky way toward, or you're doing whatever you can to close the gap so that you can be most effective. And then if you were a shooty and you see somebody closing the gap, you know that they are a stabby, and so you try to shoot them before they get within stabbing range. So a combat that starts favoring the ranged combat characters then favors the melee combat characters when they've managed to make it in. So there's tactics that is involved, there is just a different feel to the combat, and there is a power dynamic that changes. The melee characters earn their superiority in the combat, whereas the ranged characters start with it, and then it becomes a problem.
Okay. I think number one, I think you summarized like all of the British medieval army fights in just like a very, very simple statement. Shoot the stabbies and stab the shooties.
I can't take credit for
Um,
that. That's a Warhammer thing.
oh, darn. Well, I was going to say it was brilliant, and you gave
I'm not
appropriate
saying
credit.
it's not. I just can't take credit.
Um, but let's throw out some what are some good examples? I always ask you this sort of thing, but what are some good examples of melee focused characters?
All right. Well, if we're looking to the canon, Power Rangers, it's literally every Power Ranger. Okay. I'm not a Power Rangers expert. Maybe there's a Power Ranger who has never thrown a punch across all of their series, but to my knowledge, every single Power Ranger is there for the melee combat scenes. We did talk about the Dino Fury season that I watched, and what on earth are you doing?
Power Ranger stuff.
That's Power Ranger stuff?
I have no idea. They do a weird arm thing whenever they're anyway.
Okay, I guess I saw it. Anyway, yeah, so in Dino Fury, there's Kendall, who doesn't really go on missions, but when she does, she joins them in the front line and throws the kicks. And likewise, when they form a Zord, even though I believe the Zords all have missile launchers and stuff, no, it's still punching and kicking and swinging of swords. It always is melee. G.I. Joe, it's more specific, because G.I. Joe, if you are a melee character, you are the exception. And so I've listed a couple of them here. Storm Shadow is one of the most significant ones, because even more so than Snake Eyes, who, when you think Snake Eyes, you think Uzi in one hand and sword in the other hand. Storm Shadow, you usually think him just using medieval weapons. His toys have never come with a gun that I know of, except for maybe that Tommy Arashikage one. but you do see him using guns occasionally in the source material. But canonically, Storm Shadow is a better archer than he is a sword fighter. So I've included a second, less well known, but better example, and that is Jinx. So Jinx was G.I. Joe's first pure ninja, Snake Eyes being a multi-class type ninja. All of Jinx's weapons are melee, and Jinx is purely known as like actually, she's not a sword fighter. She uses like a double-bladed staff that they gave a name to that is not the correct name for the weapon that she's using. Going on down the
Excellent.
list, of course, we've got Sergeant Slaughter. Now, I've said before that Sergeant Slaughter, the G.I. Joe character, is not a professional wrestler, has no ties to wrestling, except that when he gets on the battlefield, he's throwing punches, he's throwing people around. He will be seen with the, the snow job rifle that was the standard issue rifle in Sunbow. But if you think about the season 2 opener, he like moves forward with the triple T, and then they get, oh wait, was it him? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him. They get close to Monkey Wrench the Dreadnought. Sergeant Slaughter punches him, breaks his sunglasses. Pretty cool shot. So that's Sergeant Slaughter's style. He may come with tanks, but he wants to punch you more than anything else.
Yeah, I think he used the rifle to like break over somebody's head too.
He
So
does, yeah. In the movie,
yeah.
he what happens to his rifle? Something happens, or is it Jinx? No, it's him. Something happens to his rifle, and so he whacks it in the head. I think it was the giant insect bridge thing that like got up to eat them, and he's like, no, knocks it unconscious. It falls down, and they use it as a bridge anyway.
Yeah. The gun was probably functioning just fine. He just likes hitting things.
Yeah, but they've shot those things before. It didn't work, but whack him in the head, that knocks him out.
All right. Who else?
Right behind you.
What? Oh my God, he's right behind me.
That is Big Boa. So Big Boa, similar to Jinx, less well known than Sergeant Slaughter, but an excellent example because he is Cobra's trainer. He trains the Vipers, and he is like the main character of the adventure that comes in Cobra Codex. I love Big Boa, and I was really grateful to be able to use him. And he is a character that comes with no guns and technically no weapons. He comes with boxing gloves and a speed bag with Joe written on it. At least that's the original. The newer one also comes with, I believe he comes with weights. Anyway, he comes with a couple of other accessories. But that's Big Boa's thing. He is not a character that goes out in the field. He's a character that stays by and makes sure that all the Vipers are combat ready.
And by pushing a bowling ball up a hill with their noses, which I can't imagine would be very comfortable. Like I can't even imagine how you would do that.
Is that on his file card?
I believe so.
Okay. I know the fist the size of turkeys is on the file card, and it showed up in a couple of places in different rulebooks. And finally, a shout out to Rocky, as in Rocky Balboa, who was almost a G.I. Joe. He was almost the third Celebrity Joe, and which would have been funny because he's not a celebrity, he's a fictional character, although then again, so is Sergeant Slaughter. And it got so close that they actually announced him in Order of Battle, which was just a roster book talking about all the different G.I. Joe and Cobra characters, and Rocky just happened to be in there. And it had gone to print before the deal fell apart. And so he was never released. The deal was never signed. He became, or Stallone signed over his likeness to do Rambo and the Freedom Fighters. Was that what it was called? And so Rocky, they had to do a retraction saying Rocky Balboa is not and has never been a member of G.I. Joe. But that little like moment to like get there right on top of things caused a problem and ended up being having to be retracted, and created a fun moment of like a fun bit of trivia for G.I. Joe fans.
And launched 100 customs too, as one of the main figures that I see people wanting to customize is Rocky.
And it's a weird look too, because he's not in boxer shorts. He's in like
Sweatpants.
track pants and a tank top. And of course, he comes with a staff with a boxing glove on the end of it.
Yo, Adrian.
For Transformers, I listed a couple of them, and I am sure there are better examples of this. But I talked about Devastator, and I just think the Constructicons in general, they all have pistols, but when they form Devastator, he just becomes a puncher and a stomper. More so than all of the other combiners, I believe. I know that most of them still do get in fistfights with each other, But at least maybe I think of Devastator as the one that throws punches the most because for a while he was the only one. And so
Hmm.
he showed up and he went kaiju on everyone else. I've also included Bludgeon, who is the Cobra Samurai with a sword. So despite his name being Bludgeon, he has a sharp weapon. And then I've got the Dinobots. Now the Dinobots, they breathe fire. Some of them have missiles, but they bite, they stomp, they use their natural dinosaur weapons. And so those are some of the melee combat characters I think of when I think of Transformers. Am I missing anybody obvious? I feel like this is an incomplete list.
Well, I mean, even Optimus Prime had that axe
Yep.
and chain thing that he would bring out and actually scrap with. There have been numerous, and I think that it has a lot to do with that dramatic. It's more dramatic thing that you were speaking earlier. There have been a bunch of fights where they've just come down to, fist fights or, using some sort of energy thing that pops out of your arm.
Yeah, that axe was just one of those things Sunbow threw in for a more dramatic fight between Optimus and Megatron. And it was so iconic and memorable that it just became part of his repertoire later. Optimus Prime figures always came with the ion cannon, and most of them now come with an axe.
Iconic and memorable, but you forgot it.
But, well, no, because when I think of a melee character, like that's like saying that General Hawk might get into a fist fight sometimes,
That's true.
but he's not a melee character. Optimus Prime, he's not a melee character, but when he has to be, he can bust out that axe.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. Well, we'll put a pin in that one because I'm interested in hearing about the ponies.
All right, so in My Little Pony, when fights break out, they don't punch, they kick. They buck is what they call it. And the characters that buck the most, obviously, are the ones with no magic. Applejack and Rainbow Dash of the main six are the ones that most tangle up, get tangled up into melee combat. I've included Big Mac in here, who is not as uh, likely to show up in a fight scene, but he's the biggest, he's the strongest, and so I have a feeling that if he did show up, he would get his kicks in. There's not much more to it than that. Fights happen on My Little Pony, and when they do, you either use magic or you punch and kick. They have more armor than they have weapons. You see them with spears. I don't think I've ever seen anyone on My Little Pony get stabbed. I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't believe that happened that much or ever.
Fair enough. And I guess why are they iconic? Like what about the fact that they're melee focused makes that iconic? Is it just the dramatic part, or is there anything else to it?
I mean, looking at them, like all of the characters that we listed are iconic for very different reasons. Like Power Rangers, it is a martial arts fantasy, so that's why everyone's throwing punches and kicks. It's exciting, it's fun, it's colorful the way they do it. Like it's impractical, but it's exciting. And in GI Joe, it's fun because they're the exceptions, and because Larry Hama did such a good job of exploring Storm Shadow's origin and creating a whole world of the Arashikage that it caught on, and you couldn't just stop with Storm Shadow. And so we eventually got Jinx, we eventually got Ninja Force. Snake Eyes gradually became more and more of a ninja. And so he started out as an exception, and he was such an exceptional exception that he became a norm.
Hmm. And everything became ninja.
Yeah. And then in
Ooh.
Transformers, I think it's because, they switch between warrior and vehicle. And so having somebody that could overpower them in vehicle mode, that is like impressive, that is memorable. And so that's why seeing Devastator throw people around in car mode, seeing the Dinobots bite the Seekers out of the air by the wings, that stands out because it is kind of like Storm Shadow. It is unusual for how that usually plays out. And then in My Little Pony, Applejack and Rainbow Dash are just kind of the athletic ones, and so it's not a surprise that they become the best ones in melee combat.
Right. So talk to me about melee roles. What are if somebody wants to get in there and toss a couple of punches with our good friend Big Boa behind me? What roles
I don't
do
know if
you
I would
think?
pick Big Boa first.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe Little Mac. I'm not sure, but at
I
this
have a
point,
little Mac reference all loaded and ready to go for later.
all right. Well, we'll get to that one. But okay, what makes a good melee roll? And You're looking for a fighter. What role do you take?
All right, so there's three things that you want to look for. One of them is that you need your Essence Score boots to line up so that you don't have to max out your melee skill at first level and then hope at some point it gets better. No, if you get either strength or speed and then you are that type of melee combatant, you need to make sure that that is one of your main Essence Score boosts. But you also want to perk early so that it sets the tempo of anyone can throw a punch, but you throw a punch in a special way. And even if you never get another perk that improves your melee combat, just having one right up front, that's a good sign that you are a character that can do combat in melee in your own way, and you can build the rest of your character around one of these early perks. And then, of course, you've got the weapon training. But even if you only have very basic weapon training, it would be good to have something to improve your unarmed combat. But if you don't get that from your role, there's influences that do that and general perks. And so if you know that you're going to be a hand to hand or just bare knuckled fighter, there's ways to make sure that you can make that build possible right from the start. I don't think we've got any origin. Maybe we have an origin. Anyway, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I can think of at least one influence that changes it because melee weapons have the your standard effect and then your secondary effect or your alternate effects is what it's called. And alternate effects usually have a downshift, and in the case of an unarmed attack, your standard effect is stun, which you can build a character around stun. But if you actually want to do lethal damage, the alternate effect defaults to being downshift 1, but there are ways to mitigate that downshift.
Okay.
I believe
Um,
violent is one of the
ooh,
one of the influences that'll solve that problem for you.
excellent. Balance is the solution.
Now I have a list of the roles from each of the four first settings, and the ones that I call out as being the best for melee. Power Rangers, no surprise, is the longest list, so much so that I divided into three different categories of a heat map of best for melee to least worst for melee. You've got yellow and purple are best, green, red, and the Path of Flame, which I'll explain in a second because I don't think you know what that is.
No.
Those are secondary, and then black. I'll talk about why black made it onto the list. So going for the core rulebook roles, the best one is yellow. At first level, you get triple strike attacks, and whenever you make a finesse attack action, you can spend a power point to make the attack with each of your hands at no penalty. Then a third follow-up martial arts attack at a target of one of the two previous strikes. So it's kind of wordy, but it basically means that you can attack three times in one turn. Cost a power point, which is a renewable or a expendable resource in Power Rangers, but three attacks in melee on your turn, that's pretty powerful. You also get your strike bonus. At the beginning of any round, you can spend a personal power to apply a bonus to the first melee attack you make during your attack. You can go Nova, is what it's usually called when you spend all of your expendable resources in one shot. But it being a melee character, in Power Rangers, you will probably get into melee in the first round. But if you were playing a Yellow Ranger in, say, a G.I. Joe game and a lot of people are shooting at you, you would spend the first couple of rounds getting into position, and then you could just go wild on somebody with combination, triple attack, and strike bonus. And eventually you get Whirlwind Strike, which, again, expend a personal power, and your attacks, melee attack. Sorry, allow your attack actions, melee attacks to target every enemy adjacent to you until the end of the round. So you would do that instead of triple strike attacks, and only in a situation where it would be beneficial, where you would get more than three attacks.
Nice. I
All
do
right.
want to point out that
Yes.
going Nova is the new Alpha Strike.
Okay.
Alpha Strike what comes from, I believe, BattleTech, and it was you just basically point it and fire every single gun at once, and might burn you out or leave you vulnerable, but take them out in the first time.
I believe going Nova comes from the Human Torch. I think
Hmm.
like when things are tough, he will say to Reed, like, should I go Nova? And then he, superheats, to the heat of a sun.
Well, that's not good.
Well, that's why you only do it when you really need to, because you're
Very
out of
well.
your fire after that.
It's like having a magic power or what do you call it? A superpower that is, I can crack the earth in half. Yeah, but that's not really a power because you can't use it like more than once. Anyway, sorry, focusing. Mealy, so you were at about to jump into, I guess, G.I. Joe?
No, no, that was just the first of the Power Rangers roles.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, let's get going.
All right, quickly, black is on the list because strength is its gold progression, so it's its second best progression. And there's not a lot you can do with strength in combat. You can boost your wounds by your conditioning, but otherwise, if you're not buffing up your might, then like athletics is useful and brawn is situationally useful, but might is the best of the strength based skills. And so if you are a Black Ranger, consider building a melee version, even if you do not get any perks for it, just because your strength progresses that quickly and it's that useful. All right, green gets a melee perk early on. It's called Solo Strike by making only a single melee attack against an adjacent target, which is also not adjacent to any of your allies. Which in Power Rangers, I don't know how often this comes up, and I am curious for people with experience playing Green Rangers how much you have to manipulate the battlefield so that you are off on your own to do a solo strike. But you then add a bump based on the Green Ranger, their table. So this is a main perk for that role. And so you definitely want to build a character that is capable of melee because this is exclusively for melee. And then red has something similar, Power Strike. You can, when you make any form of melee attack while morphed, you can spend a power point to add a number of bonus damage to the attack. The amount of damage you add is based on your chart. So this one costs a power point, but does additional damage, and damage is hard to come by in Essence20. So that is a powerful perk. Then we've got a couple more Power Rangers roles. In Finster's Monstermatic cookbook, they introduced the psychopaths. So these are basically evil Power Rangers. And instead of having Zords, they grow. And all the psychopaths have a couple of. They have something called Psycho Strike, which is a special melee weapon that they get, which when they hit with the alternate effect, it does some blunt damage, and it gives the person receiving the attack a snag on their next turn. So it's debilitating on top of being damaging. But one of the paths specifically is the Path of Flame. And one of the reasons I'm calling this out above all of the other is, first of all, its two fastest progressing essence scores are speed and strength. So this is definitely built for combat. And at first level, it gets something called Driving Strike. By spending one personal power before making a melee attack, you can either ignore a target's bonus from armor to defense or reroll any skill dice used in the attack. So very powerful, especially if you are specializing in melee and you are re-rolling any of the skill dice like that. That's hefty.
And if you're punching a robot
I'd punch a robot.
without that ability, I mean, you got to have Path of Flame. You're going to punch robots.
Fine. I'll kick Path of Flame then. Finally,
All right.
a jump through time has possibly my favorite ranger role. It is the purple spectrum, and it is an emotion-based ranger. And so as you level up, you learn to tap into the power of more and more emotions, and you get to choose which ones you get at first level. And then as you level up, you increase your emotional range, I think it's called. And your anger bonus is you gain an upshift to unarmed and one-handed melee attacks. And also, as you level up, you gain unique strike. You gain this 2 times. Once you get to create a unique melee weapon, and then later you get to create a unique ranged weapons. And there's a chart of explaining how you create your purple one. I don't know why you don't get both of them at the same time and you get to choose one or the other. But you choose melee first, and therefore I think most purple rangers will tend towards being melee combatants. And anger, because of it, are angry. So that's cool. It's cool that you get to design your own melee attack as part of it. And it's technically an unarmed attack because, so think of it more like a special martial arts technique that you develop.
Okay. Moving on from Power Rangers.
All right, we got GI Joe.
I
So
mean, you
GI
couldn't get any
Joe,
more bizarre than that last one. So I figure it's that's a good
what
place to end.
emotion based martial artist?
Emotion-based martial artist.
I don't see why you're bouncing off of that one. All
All
right,
right.
so
Well,
the GI Joe core rulebook focuses on two of the roles focus on melee combat. One of them is the commando, the other one is the renegade. One of them is our finesse based attacker. Basically, although you are not forced to be, you can take might if you want. And the other one is the might based attacker. Although you are not forced to, you can take finesse if you want. So, commando, in addition to focusing on speed, you get sneak attack, which is not exclusively for melee, but let me just read over the parameters of what a sneak attack is, and you'll see how it does favor a melee attack. So, once per turn, when using a silent weapon to attack a target within 20 feet, and you have an edge on the attack or an ally within 20 feet, you deal additional damage. So it definitely benefits being close up, and the best thing to do when you're close up is to make melee attacks, but you're not limited to it. So if you want to throw a shuriken, if you have a short bow, or even if you want to use a pistol with a silencer on it, you're able to do that for the sneak attack. But just know that to do that, you have to get close enough, and if you are not a stabby type commando, and you are shooting a stabby, then the stabby will get stabby on you soon. So be decently stabby, even if you are a shooty commando.
all right.
And then later you get takedown, which is one of the more elaborate perks in the game, using both hands to make an unarmed might or finesse attack against the toughness of a living target who is surprised or not in combat and unaware of your presence. If you are successful and the target's threat level is no higher than your level, you deal no damage but inflict the restrained condition on them and knock them unconscious. So if you can sneak up on somebody, you can completely take them out. This is the Arkham Asylum perk.
Hmm. It, hmm. I'm interested in why the threat level restriction.
So that if you are going against a solo villain, you're not just taking them out in one shot.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, this is for when you are taking on a mob, you can thin the herd.
Got it. All right. How about the other ones?
Yeah, so the Renegade is the other one that is primarily a melee combatant or short range. We'll talk about it in a second. So you get Reckless Abandon. This is the Renegade's answer to Rage. There's no hiding it. And it gives you a bonus to strength and strength-based skill tests. So if you are built for might, this is a great way to get in there and do a lot of damage up close and be, very effective in melee. And because you're getting these upshifts when you enter Reckless Abandon, it means that you don't have to invest as much into might, and you can have a little bit more broadly applied or broadly invested skill points. And then when you need might, you enter Reckless Abandon. So, or you could just max out your might, and then when you enter Reckless Abandon, you become an absolute beast. And then the other one that Renegade gets that is really effective for close combat is not getting away that easy. It basically is an attack of opportunity. If you are in melee with somebody, or either you are in melee or somebody else enters melee, you can attack them for free.
Nice.
You have to set it as a free contingent, like spend a free action to set a contingency action, so you don't just constantly get these attacks of opportunity when anyone enters your melee. But if you see somebody closing in on you, you can spend on your turn, say like, when that guy gets close, I'm just going to punch him right in the face.
Excellent.
Then a couple of other roles that are pretty good in melee are the Ranger, which, depending on the direction you go with your environmental exposures, you can craft a very good melee combatant. And the Vanguard, I was surprised to realize, is gold in strength and silver, I think, in speed. It is not a speed-based character. And so even though you think of the Vanguard as a heavy weapon, like big machine gun type, you could actually make a very strong melee combatant just based on the fact that your strength goes up so quickly and most of your perks are flexible enough that they can apply to melee.
Interesting. That's frightening. The idea of combining that shield with with a very, very big hammer, for instance.
Yeah, yeah. Or, well, there's the power tool in the core rulebook, and then later there's other good melee weapons that we could discuss if we have time. It's getting a little long.
It
Maybe
is.
we'll have a weapon episode another time.
Oh, maybe just sort of summarize for Transformers and ponies. What type of roles would you be looking at?
All right. So for Transformers, the obvious one is the Warrior. This is straight up the melee combatant role. You now one of the things I like about it is that it is very forgiving if you have a low strength because Foot Soldier. When in bot mode, treat your speed as if it was too higher when calculating how many free actions you get on your turn.
Hmm.
So we've alluded to the fact that speed is the strongest essence score, and really you are penalized if you do not have at least three because then you're not even getting a free action. But we didn't want everyone to feel like they had to put ranks into speed just to get their extra actions. So if you're okay being a bit slower, and if you think about someone like Bulkhead or even Ironhide, just the big, slow, slogging, slotting,
Yeah.
slotting. Yeah, okay. It just felt wrong. Uh,
Plotting?
Plotting, maybe that's what I meant. The big slow bots, then you are not penalized. You can still get some free actions as long as you have in one speed. In fact, you will get a free action because you treat it too higher when you are in bot mode. You can also manifest melee weapon. This is something that I kind of wish I could redo because everyone can manifest a melee weapon. It costs them energon, whereas you do it for free. I think I could have still done something a little more interesting here instead of just giving you a free version of something everybody can do.
It sounds an
But yeah,
awful lot
that
like a
is
scabbard.
yeah.
Like just, okay, I've got this.
So the warrior is the one that is straight up if you want to be a melee character, but there's a couple of other ones that you can be a very effective melee character. One of them you might not expect is the scientist, but you can make attacks with electricity weapons using technology. And that
Oh.
includes weapons like melee weapons. And so if you want to just go in there with your prod, Dr. Mindbender style, you can be a very effective scientist without even needing to invest in might or finesse. You can still max out your intelligence or your smarts and still be very good in combat. And the analyst, it has determined probability, which lets you, as a free action, run a simulation of what a standard action might be like. And then if you succeed or fail, no, if you succeed in the simulation, you can then take that result and apply it. And if you fail, it didn't cost you your standard action. And this is basically the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock scene where he's boxing and he's just waiting to see how the whole fight plays out before he just knocks the much bigger man down. So if you want to make that character as an analyst, which again feels like it should be the smart guy, but everyone's a fighter in Transformers, and so that is one way that you can be a smart combatant. And then finally, there's the Mode Master. Because the Mode Master has a custom frame which lets you dictate what essence scores increase at what rate, you can very easily build a melee combatant. And that's where the Little Mac reference was coming in. I was going to say you could be the coach and you could pop out a Little Mac minicon, and you're giving them advice from the background while your minicon's doing the melee combat, or you can pop out your partner and you both go and just beat up a guy together.
I love that. But I think what stuck in my mind is an essential build for that Sherlock Holmes using Analyst
Ooh,
as a base.
I could even like if something Sherlock Holmes related comes out, then I could do multiple different Sherlock Holmes builds just based on different interpretations.
Awesome. Ponies.
Ponies, I've got the Spirit of Loyalty here, which is a little bit more combat friendly in that it's based around lending assistance as a free action. And so in combat, you make everybody else very good. It was a stretch, and so there's not really a lot to say there other than that, similar to the Mode Master, all of the roles in My Little Pony, you get to dictate the order that you progress your essence scores. And so for really any of them, you can make a melee version of that character. Magic makes a very interesting Hexblade type character, or a Magus, depending on the system that you are thinking about. A Gish melee slash magic character, or Spirit of Laughter if you want to make like a Joker goon. Maybe more of a Harley Quinn. She's more of the melee combatant of the two. So yeah, there's definitely ways that you can turn the My Little Pony roles into melee combatants.
I think we have a little bit of time to spend on melee weapons, melee weapons, melee weapons. So talk to me a bit about melee weapons.
So melee weapons, were there was a very strange evolution to how the melee weapons ended up working out. The original intent when I turned it over, because I designed the equipment rules that were then globalized to all the different core rulebooks. I did it for the G.I. Joe. The intent was if it was a might melee weapon, it wasn't like there was no finesse to it, obviously, because it's not the finesse melee weapon. And so it would have a decent effect, but not no alternate effect and very boring traits. Whereas the finesse based ones I thought of as the martial arts weapons. And so those are the ones that if you learn how to use these, then you can become a master. And they would usually be one step higher, like one step less available, but they would have alternate effects and they would have more interesting traits. And it was just decided in editing that there was something wrong with that. And so all melee weapons in the G.I. Joe book became might slash finesse. And so they lost a lot of personality there, but it did open up a lot of different builds. You like, if you think of something like a Tonfa staff, that's something that is just a basic blunt weapon, but in the right hands, you can do the cool spinning thing that Nightwing does. Or Daredevil's another example of like that is he's probably a might-based fighter, but he does fancy things with his weapons. So I do wish it had retained the personality that I had originally built into it, but I don't fault it for being more flexible because I like character creation flexibility. The problem is that this was not globally applied, and so Power Rangers has distinction between might weapons and finesse weapons, and Transformers doesn't in the core rulebook, but then slowly added new weapons to the game that were either might or melee, whereas G.I. Joe, every time I added weapons to the game, respected the idea that all melee weapons were might slash finesse. And so there used to be a purpose to the distinction, and now it's just kind of sometimes it's might, sometimes it's melee, sometimes it's both. And just as somebody who likes elegant design, that's disappointing to me. That's something that in editing things changed in a way that I think we ultimately lost something.
Yeah, I just can't see Tollbooth elegantly swinging around a jackhammer.
Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer, my bad.
That's all right.
Now, it was a Jaws of Life that Ripper came with, so that's not even
Yeah.
a jackhammer either.
He came with the and I guess the animators didn't know how to illustrate that, and so he just used his rifle with a big serrated what do you call it? Like you got a blade in the what?
Slashy claw or a bayonet, but I call
bayonet. There we go. Yeah, a big serrated bayonet.
Okay. So we mentioned quickly essence builds, essential builds. Damn,
essential builds.
I wrote it down.
Right
So essentials, essential builds, and I know we're all waiting to find out who won of the three different characters that you were going to bring to the table. 11, Benoit Blanc, and Klaus. Who won?
Klaus. Klaus won.
Oh.
Unopposed as far as from the last time I calculated it. People liked the idea of building Santa Claus, and they liked specifically the idea that Klaus was a very warrior-focused Santa. And so I have not built it as of this recording. That'll be going up this Friday as of this recording. So if you're hearing this episode, it went up last week.
And what's next?
So I'm going to once again open it up, although this being over this will be in the thick of the holidays, so I don't know how much reaction we'll get, but maybe if there's enough reaction, then I will do what the people want. So I've got three people on here. One of them is 11, because once again, I said that it makes more sense to do the early January. Oh yeah, I should say this is for the January 2nd installment of Essential Builds. So 11 is bumping up, 11 from Stranger Things, because Stranger Things is concluded the day of this episode's release. And so assuming that didn't Game of Thrones the ending, everyone will be satisfied and will want to see what 11 looks like in Essential Builds. Second one, takes some explaining. So Word Burglar, who of course does our theme song, released a song called The War in Wardrobe, and it is about Cobra's tailor, codename Cross Stitch. And I recently listened to the song again, and I was like, I should make Cross Stitch. And there is enough information in that song, because it's autobiographical, or no, it's biographical from a first person. Word Burglar isn't Cross Stitch. He doesn't actually make the costumes for Cobra.
That
But
we know.
yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, there's enough information in there that I could make Cross Stitch as a character, and I'm curious what that would look. And finally, we have a suggestion from the audience. So this is how they spell their name on Discord. It's broadside bracket JO close bracket. So broadside Joe. I'm not sure exactly how is broadside or Joe, whichever one we want to use. I don't know, but their name is broadside Joe. They suggested the battle bus as a transformer. So the battle bus is from Fortnite.
Fortnite?
Exactly. And they had a Transformers crossover. And in that crossover, they did animations of the battle bus converting into a robot. This was not released as a toy or anything, but it is a crossover that exists. And because I have fewer opportunities to make Transformers characters, like, robots that turn into one thing or another that couldn't potentially show up in another Transformers book, the crossovers tend to be the ones that I have to rely on. So that's it. Battle Bus from Fortnite is our third option. So to go over again, it's once again 11 from Stranger Things, Cross Stitch from Word Burglars, The War and Wardrobe, or Battle Bus from Fortnite.
I feel like if you do Battle Bus, you have to put a little bit into being able to make it dance.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying.
Hmm.
At first glance, I like the idea of Battle Bus, but I have to admit I do not know Fortnite, and I know Fortnite is one of those things that the people who are really into it would expect me to get really into it with how I build it. So hopefully I do it justice if that's the one that gets picked.
Well, it's kind of a blimp that you jump out of, so I'm not super sure. Definitely the source material that turns it into a transformer might give it more character than the game does.
I just know it's one of those things that when you scratch the surface, there is so much lore to Fortnite. It may just look like show up, build something, survive, but the people that get into it, there's a whole world to them.
A
And I
beautiful
respect that.
world. Yeah.
I'm not faulting Fortnite for that. I am faulting myself or admitting a limitation in that if I do this, Fortnite's not my jam, so I don't know how effectively I will build this. It will not be full of the references and Easter eggs that Essential Builds usually is full of.
Well, I'm going to say that if you know about Fortnite, hit us up in the comments and tell us what the battle bus should be doing so that Ryan will have a little bit of basis if it does indeed win. And let's jump to the shoutouts.
Thank you to our viewers and listeners that comment on the show. Wait, no, that's yours. I'm reading this and it's like, this doesn't feel familiar to my mouth.
You can do that one
All
if you
right. Thank you
want.
for
It's not
joining
like
us
we
for
own
episode 57 of Upshift. Thank you to our viewers and listeners that comment on the show. We thank you, and the algorithm thanks you. I actually do not have any other shout outs planned. We recorded this super early to make sure that we got ahead of it because of the holiday season. And so, yeah, some things fell through the gap. I did not fill out the shout out section. So I'm out of shout
No.
outs.
I will. So I'll throw out there, as normal, the G.I. Joe Headcast, Energon Protocols with Eric Smith. Eric gave me this wonderful shirt for Christmas,
Oh, I suspect I've
which
got that
is,
same shirt coming to me then.
well, I didn't really want to spoil it, but then on the other hand, we kind of have to show it off. So
Yes.
this is my classified T-shirt, and I suspect yours will say a different thing. But yes,
I'm
it's
sure
still
it'll be a
going.
scaffold t shirt.
I would hope so, but I don't want to
Could be
spoil the surprise for
shoehorn.
other characters. Could be shoehorn. And it has something on the back, but I won't say what that is. You would have to watch you'd have to listen to the podcast, and then you will know what it is because it's covered in some detail. Um, and that's it that I've got. Merry Boxing Day. Is
Thank
that
you
it?
once again for
Happy
joining
Boxing.
us. If you want to know more about us and see any other great content we put out, you can go to nodirectionpodcast.com. Thank you to our patrons. You can find out more at patreon.com/nodirection if you want to help us keep the lights on. And thank you to Word Burglar for the use of Letters from Snake Eyes Part 4. Find out more at wordburglar.com. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Charles Cushman.
This has been Upshift.